Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, today something completely different, as we say. I did allude to this recently in my little April update. What it is, a relative of mine presented this to me a few days ago and said, have you seen this? Now it's not new, it actually came out, and this is very important when I explain it to you. So please bear this in mind. This came out in 2016 and it's one of the first sort of generation of 3D printed kits. And it's very interesting though, because it's incredibly delicate and beautifully finely done. And it's from a company called Flugzeugwerk, and it's a chap called Monroe, and he's an American chap from Illinois. And what he did, and this is this particular kit is the Fokker D3 Early, which I'll just show you this very interesting instruction manual that came with it. Now what he did, and this is the way that people were producing 3D printing 8 years ago, if you like, which is still, to me, seems very cutting edge, because when you look at it, these parts are beautifully formed, I've got to say. Now today, the way that people do it is you buy a file online, and you would tend to 3D print your own file, having bought the printer, which are pretty expensive even today. They're getting more affordable all the time, but they're a big outlay. They also involve a lot of chemicals, and it's not something I'm going to be doing in the near future. But what this guy did, and I'll show you his website shortly, which is fascinating. What Bo did is he basically designed the actual kit, and then he went to this company called Shapeways. Now, many of you may know Shapeways. They are a trade 3D printing company. And I'll actually show you, before we get into the kit, I'll show you their website. Because even today, you can get things printed by them. You just get the file and you send it to them, so you don't have to buy all the investment with the 3D equipment. So on Shapeways, basically innovators in 3D printing, and they have this very simple, they're in the States, they're in the UK, and basically they will take the design of what you want, sorry, try and get this in the right light, and then you basically upload the file that you want them to produce, select the material you want it to be produced on, because there are different choices, and then they're going to print it and actually send you the finished product. Now this is anything from, you know, industrial items or household products like washing up bowls, or, you know, anything you can think of that can be 3D printed. And of course we've seen the extremes of 3D printing. There was a case recently in the news of somebody 3D printed firearms and got arrested because he was 3D printing some sort of semi-automatic weapon. It shows you what's possible though. And then over you've got the war in Ukraine, where they're 3D printing parts for drones, and they're churning them out, you know, like a cottage industry, for these kamikaze type FPV drones, and they are playing a big role in that conflict. So these 3D printing's come a long way, So those of you that don't want to get involved, and like me, to be honest, and thinking, oh, I'm not getting into that now, spending thousands on 3D printers, you can start researching it. Go on Shapeways website, and they'll sort of guide you through different applications. So you got there, it was like a speaker surround for a speaker. So that's you know, a product. A lot of commercial stuff is going on here. They're a commercial 3D printing company, basically. All sorts of things. You've got novelty items like jewellery, eyewear, glasses. You know, sorry, it might be better if I zoomed you in for this. Actually, I just realised. Let's just go back a second. See a bit more detail. There we go. So here you go. So applications. So industrial applications. It's a sound speaker. Jewellery. Bring this over a little touch. Glasses, eyewear. All sorts of household items like, you know, lamps. You name it, and they basically do it. Really, they'll do anything. Anyway, Shapeways, I'm not sort of trying to be an advert for Shapeways particularly, but what they essentially do is they are on-demand 3D printing. There you go, parts for drones and all sorts of things. You name it and they will do it. So what I'll do, I will include a little link at the end of this video for you to go and have a nose at their website. But we'll get back onto this kit and the chap who has actually generated it. This is his website. This is Aircraft in Pixels, and this is Bo Monroe. Now he has a shop. I'll show you this first, and then we'll get into this particular kit, because this will whet your appetite in a huge way, and then I'll show you just what he's capable of. So he's got this online shop. Again, zooming in would be helpful. Just have a quick sip of my. I've got my Airfix mug out today. A bit inappropriate, really, but anyway. Nice coffee. It's a bit cold today, a bit very wintry and windy and horrible. Need a nice warming drink. Maybe a stronger one later. Now then, so they have free shipping on large orders. Many of you may be aware of, sorry, I should have said this before I zoomed in. Many of you may be aware of companies like Phase Hanger. Is it Mike Reeves in the USA? He's a really clever guy, and he's got some very impressive products and does some amazing to-order 3D printing, a little bit like Shapeways, but more aimed at the modelling market. He does weapons and glide bombs and all sorts of intricate parts and aftermarket items in 3D printing. And he does ejector seats and all the usual things. I must admit, his company Phase Hanger, that's another one that we've known well. But this chap has only just been. I've just only learned about him in the last few days. Let's have a look at this website. When you see these pictures, your mouth is going to water. I'm sure of it. So here we go. Now then, if any of you are into things like the Qatari Spitfire. Sorry, let me zoom in a bit more. The Qatari Spitfire, for example, or you're into your wingnut wings, you are going to find some of these items extremely interesting, I think. Extremely interesting. So, here's just a little, he's got the Mackie, 132 Mackie here. You have to forgive me because I don't know which manufacturer does that kit, but here we're getting into the Qatari stuff. Spitfire detail pack, upgrade bundle for the Spitfire Mark 1 here. World War One Albatross, wingnut wings Albatross. Gas patch machine gun mounting kit for the gas patch machine gun. That's interesting, isn't it? And then we've got, getting right up to date now, 132 Albatross, then we get into the Qatari Spitfire 32nd scale radiator and fairing, more detailed. The seat with framework. The 24 scale Spitfire cockpit accessories for the early version. Wow, that's, I suppose, for the Airfix, really, if it's the early Spitfires. Early. I'm just puzzled by the early bit. Because the 124 scale Spitfire is probably not worth upgrading in my view. The Airfix one, I'm talking about the old tool, not the new Mark 9, yeah? But anyway, let's have a look at one of these in detail. So here you go. Look at the size of this thing compared to a match. That's quite cleverly done, isn't it? $35 US. And then you got all sorts of other things. Manual undercarriage control for the Spitfire. 24 scale again. 24 scale Mark 1 throttle quadrant. So it is aimed at the Airfix, isn't it, really, I think? Interesting. And then you got the Pfalz wheels. You got all sorts of wingnut wings items creeping in here. Look at this. Lovely Daimler-Benz engine. There we go. So oil pump for Daimler-Benz. Sorry, Daimler Mercedes D3. Look at this. Mercedes cylinders for the Daimler Mercedes engine. Some absolutely wonderful stuff here. Albatross parts. Yeah. D3A, that's this aircraft. D3A cylinders. albatross wheels, and on it goes, you know. Spitfire control column, 124 scale Mark 1A. So you can buy quite a lot of these products and suddenly turn your why is that blank? You can suddenly turn your rather grim 24 scale Airfix Mark 1 Spitfire into something quite special. And there's some amazing things here. Here radiators. And then they've got all sorts of silly things like mugs and things. So quite a few items that you might find useful. So that's aircraftinpixels.com, and this chap Monroe that runs the company. So it looks to me basically as, when I go back to this model from 2016, this is right up to date, obviously. So he's clearly doing the 3D printing in house now, right? It sounds like it's not Shapeways doing it anymore, because obviously anybody that's really into this over time will invest in the equipment, if you're going to be a manufacturer anyway. So I just thought I'd show you those two. But let's get into the sort of detail of the sort of thing that they're offering. So I'm going to show you this. So this is the Flugzeugwerk, which is Monroe's company, or kit company, I should say, a brand of model kits, and they are 3D printed. Shows you here all the parts that come in the kit. And it says that basically it's provided by Shapeways. So obviously these were manufactured sort of 8 or 9 years ago. And there's a bit of a history about the aircraft, further reference reading about the aircraft. And then it gets into exactly what they're offering. So it says, I'll read this to you. It's quite an eye-opener. Now the materials have changed slightly over time, of course, but we'll tell you what it's got here. So it's FUD and FXD. What is this stuff? That's what we all want to know. So what Shapeways calls frosted detail plastic is actually an acrylic photopolymer that is produced on a machine called a Stratasys object printer. The object works by printing out dots of the acrylic goop layer by layer, which are then exposed to UV light to harden it. Where support is necessary in order for the object to stand, a waxy substance is laid down to form a scaffold, which we're familiar with, aren't we? When the part is complete, the waxy stuff is removed, well, most of it anyway. More on that below. Shapeways offers these parts frosted. They offer two versions: Frosted Extreme Detail FXD or Frosted Ultra Detail FUD. The two materials are identical except for a single setting on the machine which controls how thick the layers are. The FUD layers are 29 microns thick and the FXD are about half at 16 microns. So FXD has potential for somewhat smoother surfaces as the steps between the layers are much smaller. Makes sense, doesn't it? Material properties. This acrylic photopolymer stuff is generally like most plastics, but has some properties that are a bit different. Let me have a bit of my coffee. A bit different than the polystyrene that you are probably used to with model kits. In particular, it is more brittle. It tends to have an internal grain due to the layered nature in which it was made. It can be drilled and sanded and so forth, but in all cases be very gentle. Glue meant for styrene will not work on it, so use CA instead. So it's probably not really a kit for me, because I'm allergic to CA, as I've talked about before. I do use the Rocket Glue, which is the odourless CA, but it's good, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure I want to use that much of it on a kit like this. But please don't be put off, because it's just me. Cleaning the parts. Your parts will arrive with most of the aforementioned support wax removed, but not all of it. And in fact, each part will have at least a thin coating of this substance overall. It will also be present in some of the cavities. The support must be removed before painting or gluing of the parts. Now it's getting complicated. There are several ways to accomplish this. Ultrasonic cleaner. Ultrasonic cleaning machines are quite cheap. You can get them for less than $40. And they are useful devices to have around. If you use an ultrasonic cleaner, be sure that put the parts in cool water with a drop or two of dishwasher detergent. That's to reduce the surface tension of the water. If your machine has a heater, leave it off. Make sure the water doesn't get too hot during the cleaning cycle, as this might deform the parts. Dish soap and water. Alternatively, you can simply wash the parts by hand with dish soap, but be very careful so as not to break anything. We could use an acetone bath. Something from Frankenstein's laboratory, all this, doesn't it? Acetone is quite effective in removing support wax. Simply place the part in a covered container for a few minutes. Avoid leaving the parts any longer than that though, as the acetone will eventually attack the acrylic. You know the parts are clean when the areas that had support scaffolding take on a raised, white, frosty or fuzzy look. Dealing with the printing lines and support fuzz, the next step is dealing with those pesky printing artifacts, printing lines and support fuzz. We find that the most expedient method is to give the parts a light coat of a filling primer, such as Alclad's Grey Micro Filler Primer. I've got some of that. The primer coat will really help you see what needs addressing. The fuzzy support areas can usually be taken care of with just a few swipes of a medium grade sanding stick. Fiberglass scratch pen is also useful. I've got one of those as well somewhere. Print lines may require a few coats of surface medium such as Mr. Surfacer, followed by careful sanding. Warped parts. Sometimes parts can arrive warped from Shapeways, but don't panic. In most cases any warpage is easily corrected by holding the part under a bit of hot water, not boiling, and gently bending it back to the correct shape. Once cooled, the part should hold its shape. Okay, so let's zoom you in. You can have a look at this. It's quite an interesting background, isn't it? Now, this is, I say, it's 2016 vintage, but I think you're still going to be quite impressed by what you see here. This is the kit. You've got the Fokker D3, you've got the wings, you've got all the bits of the tail section, wheels, turtle deck, engine cowling, and then the fuselage. And it says here, you'll also need an engine, wingnut wings. Wingnut wings. At time of writing, wingnut wings have these available. Oh well, sadly that's no longer available, is it? Unfortunately. Machine guns you can get from gas patch models, which I've recommended many times before. And sorry to zoom you out. And you can get propellers from your Wingnut Wings spares box. Wingnut Wings spares box? Do you know what they cost now? I'm not going to use those as spares. God, sell them off at £15 per propeller. Tyres. You can use rubber O-rings of diameter roughly 21.5 OD. Ooh, that's quite cool, isn't it? The wheels are supplied without tyres, so you need to add the tyres. Interesting. They'd look good, wouldn't it, as well, the O-rings, actually. Fat Otto make O-rings, and these were very good. Okay. Harnesses, HGW models, need a bit of brass tubing, and then you get into this sort of build. So let me just very quickly flick you through this, and you can see, it'll give you a flavour, and then I'll show you the actual part. Sorry about that. ICM logo is dominating a bit there in the background. It's just that it's stuck to the board. So, what we've got is explaining how the wings work, and the fact that you've got these two rails, the sport rails from the 3D printing that you need to remove. Snipping away with the sprue cutters. Now, I'd certainly recommend very fine ones for this. You know, you don't want your big chunky cheap sprue cutters. You want something like God Hand, I reckon, for that. Over the page, look at these. Internal rigging and trailing edges. It's so fine, isn't it? Look at that. Internal rigging. It shows you how to thread it. Holes are provided for the internal bracing wires. My goodness, it must be tiny. The wings' trailing edges can be formed with wire or microfilament. Secure to the end of each rib with a thin piece of foil as shown. Gosh, it's recommending you just foil over the end of it. Incredible. Prepare the fuselage. Look at this. There's three bits you have to snip off. Make sure you're careful and get the right ones. Then you got the lower wing spars for the longerons. Fuselage longerons. The main fuel tank. Wow. Carefully remove the fuel cap. Gosh. Now assemble as shown. Wow. Now then, rigging. Ooh. Rigging on something as fine as this, it must be very delicately done, I think. Install your fuel tank fuss with rigging. If you don't like rigging, you're not going to like this kit, I think. Remaining fuselage rigging, oh my lord. Machine gun saddles. Make 4 saddles for the Spandau from scrap. From scrap 10mm brass. Okay. Just like that, okay. Caution, a tricky step. Open up the 4 holes for the MG mounting points from 0.15mm to 0.25mm to accept the saddle pins made in the previous step. So basically telling you to be very, very careful. Look how tiny they are. These are tiny, tiny, tiny things. And there they are, the saddle pins for holding your machine gun. Cockpit floor and side detail. Installing the seat. Ammunition bins here. And then the front fuel tank and oil tank. The cheek panels at the front. Upper decking. Turtle deck, basically. Well, sorry, the upper decking around the engine, I should say. Sorry, yeah, there's your turtle deck, which goes around the pilot. Elevator control horns. Brass sheets, they're recommended. So there's quite a bit of do-it-yourself work in this kit. It's not shake and bake, is it? It's not Tamiya, you know. You need to be quite a creative innovator in terms of building and design. They tell you what to do and how to do it, don't they? But you just need to be brave. Okay. Building up your rudder. And the machine guns. Not provided, of course. So this, again, this gas patch is recommended, isn't it? Whoops. Engine and cowlings. Obviously you've got to buy your engine because that's not provided in the kit. It's just the airframe. So get your engine, so there's a few aftermarket items you need for this, obviously, to make it all work. And then you got your upper wing section. Footstep for the pilot, interplane struts. That's quite involved, isn't it? Oh, the gentleman who owns this, he's quite a World War I enthusiast, it has to be said so. For I'm sure this is quite elementary stuff, to be honest. But look at that, the way it builds up, isn't that fascinating? Main landing gear from brass tubing. And that's kind of it. So yeah, you've got to be, I think you need a good reference source material to sort of give you all the data. But obviously if you've built a wing nut wings, it's probably not going to be that much of a difficulty because there's a lot of good reference data in the wing nut wings instructions, to be honest. So that would be useful. Anyway, let's have a look at the actual thing. So I did allude to this in my my April update. You can see here we've got the fuselage. I've got slight problems with my zoom again. Here we have this amazing fuselage. I'm just going to bring it a little bit closer. It's got to be so gentle, so gentle. And it's so fine, you know, it's all in one piece. It's just all one piece, this is. And it's beautifully done. I mean, it's so delicate. Try and come in a bit closer. You see the detail there? Look at that. Awesome. So that's that one. And then we've got the wing, which I was just alluding to in the instructions, and it was showing you about how you have to remove this rail here, and also this back rail which is on the top. So you've got to be very careful how you go about that. You need some very fine nippers, I would say. So I would suggest something like what would I use on this? And don't worry, Mr. Owner, I'm not going to try it. But I would use either one of three, maybe the Tamiya fine nippers, which is that one. Zoom in. Tamiya fine nippers possibly. Don't use cheap one. You know, any cheap nipper on a kit like this. If you want something that's quite thin, these are quite fine ones. Or I've also got the Zukimura Volt. The Volt company. Focus. What's going on? The Zukimura ones, which are these very, very, very fine nippers. See that? And they're designed specifically for very, very, very fine work. Indeed. Or, last but not least, I would go to the God hand nippers, which again are very similar to your Display. If you've got Display, they are very, very similar. But these are just very, very good at fine parts. You'll notice I've got the adjuster set. There's just the tiniest of gaps. Doesn't quite, deliberately doesn't quite meet. It's about 0.5 millimetre or 1/3 of a millimetre gap. Those are very good for fine parts like this. You don't want to be going at it with some cheapo nippers when you've got such fine, like filament-like, delicate parts on a kit like this. So I'll just pop my gold hands back in there. And that one goes there. Quite a lot of nippers, haven't I? Goodness knows what, I would hardly ever use them. Anyway. I only say hardly ever use them in the context of not using them as often as I should, really. Anyway, back to the wing. So, and there is, I have to tell you, there's a slight warpage on this wing, so this probably wants the hot water treatment. But this is much more friendly to being unwarped than your average. You know, we all remember with me the Meng Fokker DR1 triplane, which was horribly, horribly warped. And it was the devil's own job to get that straightened. And the person who owns this kit had one of those, had the same problem as me, and I believe he did actually get it. He did successfully unwarp it, but it wasn't easy. So I think this would be a much simpler, straightforward job. But look at the detail here, isn't it beautiful? Look at those ribs, the holes in them. Isn't that nice? And you see the ribs at this angle, like that. That's incredible, isn't it? Really, really nice. And you know, you think, I say they're very delicate, so you've got to be very careful with them. Then we've got the other parts, which are like the tail and the rudder. I'm struggling to get into it. It's a very strong bag, probably to protect it, I suppose. Okay, and again, look how sort of delicate it all is, you know. And yet there's a slight elasticity. There's a slight almost rubberiness to it. So it's got some strength. I don't want you to think it's not going to just snap instantly, as long as you don't apply any undue pressure to it. There's your rudder, and then you've got part of the undercarriage, and then you've got the horizontal stabilisers. So that's beautiful, isn't it? And, you know, the fineness of it, really. It's exquisite. And obviously there's no flash because there's no polystyrene residue. That is that one. Then, over here, we've got some very interesting little parts. So we've got the front decking, the side cowls, and the main cowl. Here's the main engine cowl here. The trouble with some of these products is that they often, 3D printed parts often don't show up so good on the camera, I've got to say. I think you're getting it. How delicate and beautiful that is. It's very, very impressive, isn't it? It's an interesting material for sure. So that's the cowl. Then you've got the top decking. Yeah. And then you've got the side panelling. Just around the engine. There's two of those. You know, the 3D process gives you almost like a slide molded, injection molded look, doesn't it? Look at that, hollow. Aren't they nice? Beautiful. Absolutely superb. Yeah, very impressed with that. Certainly something different, isn't it? I can imagine the First World War fans amongst you are probably going into orbit with this one. Because it is very, very nice, got to be honest. It's something so... It's like picking up fine jewellery almost, it's so fine, you know. What's that? And then we've got a couple of very small parts here. A small part, I should say. A sprue with several small parts on it. I think this is the part of the mounting for the back of the engine into the sort of cockpit area. Nice, isn't it? And then we have our turtle deck, the part that goes just behind the pilot. Here. It's nice. That's cool, isn't it? And we've got our fuel tank. Nicely formed as well. Beautiful. And then we've got a couple of other. It's just nice that you get this almost a slide molded effect of hollow chambers within the moulding. It's very hard to get that in injection moulding, isn't it? Did we say this was the oil tank, I think? Oil tank, I think, yes. We've got various other small sort of ancillary parts. Get some focus, that might help. I'm not quite sure what that is. I won't comment. Looks like it's part of the instruments, perhaps. Instrument panel. And is that? I think that is the top of the fuel tank. This piece that you're supposed to cut off, the little cap on it. You can make it out. It's very small. Very nice. And then last but not least, this is the last part. Yes, the last bag is the wheels. Oof. I'm sitting out a bit for this. If I can get in. It's really hard to open these bags. I've got to say. There we go. We've got wheels, and we have got a couple of little tiny spars. I think this is perhaps for maybe at the back for the vertical stabilisers. I think it's just a couple of. Oh no, there's four, isn't there? Oh no, it's not. Sorry, I'm talking rubbish. It's the centre top wing centre, isn't it? With the spars in it, centre section. There we go. Look at that. Oh, that's good. It's the fineness and precision of it all. It's flawless, you know, it's so accurately produced. There's no sort of fluffing or fuzzing or flash or anything like that. Absolutely stunning. Then we've got our little wheel covers. There's a couple of different styles of wheel covers. They've got the pilot seat, which again is absolutely amazing, really. Look at this. Look at that. A couple of very small parts which I'll just pop straight in the bag. I think they're so tiny. I think they're unions. I think it's part of the undercarriage where the tubes go through. And then the other two parts of the wheel again. Both sides of the wheel disc. So there we are. It's a very remarkable thing because it's 3D printing, but sort of not as we know it. It's 3D printing, but without all the... It's just not got the cleanup needed that we're kind of used to now. And then the latest 3D printed parts, if you do them yourself, of course, you will end up with a lot of cleanup to do. It's all part of the process of the way that it's kind of designed, basically. And this avoids all that. These are coming to you clean. Alright, with the exception of the wings where they've just got that those two little support spars across the back and the middle that need removing. But apart from that, everything else is ready to glue. So, you know, you don't even have to cut it off a sprue, do you? Most of it's just ready to go. And look at that, it's just absolutely amazing, that is. That's one of the most remarkable pieces from a kit that I think I've ever seen. It's truly astonishing, to be honest. Just absolutely gorgeous. The fineness and the complicated sort of spacing and the detail. Absolutely amazing, to be honest. Really, really is. So there we go. So I do hope you found that of interest. It shows that there is more than one way to achieve 3D printing, obviously. I think the actual types of polymer that they're using now, the resins they're using, are a little bit different, but as a man who is not a fan of resins of any kind, me, I have to say that's got a lot of appeal. And it's certainly something you should definitely look him up on his website that I showed you. I'll place the link below the description, both for them and for Shapeways as well. So there you go, something a little bit different, something completely different, really. So I hope that was interesting to you, as interesting to you as it was to me. So that's our Fokker D3 Early from Flugzeugwerk. Bo Monroe is the gentleman who designed that, and I say he's got his website, so I'll place that below so you can have a good nosy at it. Hope you found it interesting. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you'll give marks out of 10. I think I'll give that a bit of a 10, really, because I really like it. Something very different, quite unusual, and quite something very, I can't quite find the word, but very pleasurable about handling it, although you have to be very careful. It's just so fine and finessed. A very unusual model kit, I would say. Hope you'll give me a 10 out of 10 as well, with a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you have done, don't forget to ding the notification bell and select the all option, very important. Anyway, that's it from me until next time. Stay tuned, we've got one or two other things coming through, and bits of Airfix April and looking at that book and things like that. So I hope you'll be back soon. In the meantime, thanks for all your time for watching. Really appreciate it, and thanks for all your support from all the subscribers. Till next time, stay safe and stay well. Look after yourselves. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourselves and bye for now.